We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America
and to the republic
Republic
for which it
for which it
stands,
stands,
one nation, under
under
God,
God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before we begin, I just want to make a comment about Pete. We are all deeply saddened about the sudden passing of Pete Maroscia. He has been a much beloved and highly regarded member of the Southgate faculty. Our thoughts tonight are with his family, his students, his colleagues, and his friends, and the entire Southgate community. I would also like to mention that the board has deep gratitude to the district-wide crisis response team, the K-6 team, the administrators, the social workers, and all of the people who helped Southgate get through this heartbreaking day. So I will take a motion to enter into an open meeting of the budget committee. Mrs. Nardolillo, I'll take a second. Mr. Cannon, all in favor? Thank you very much. And Mrs. Nardolillo, who is co-chair of the budget committee, has a long-standing relationship with Southgate Schools. And Mrs. Nardolillo.
Thank you, Ms. Harrison. And you're right, it was with profound sadness that the board learned of the unexpected death of Pete Maroscia, who was a longtime employee. And Pete was a kind and funny and fun-loving guy. So our hearts go out to his family, including his Southgate family and his North Colony family, and all who were privileged to have counted Pete as a friend. We know you've all suffered a great loss, and please know that your grief is shared by all of us on the Board of Education. So before we begin his memory, may you rest in peace, Coach Maroscia. Go purple and white and bison blue. You will be missed. Okay, with that, I'd like to welcome everyone back to the North Colony budget meeting tonight. I know many of you were here on our first meeting on March 1st, and we thank you for coming back, and you're not deterred. We're really appreciative of that. And as I mentioned to you last time, we really appreciate the fact that your participation in this really helps. And we know, especially during this time when it's very difficult to see people, that you can spread the word within your school community. And we appreciate that. You know, if you find there are any questions, I would, you know, feel free to direct them to the central office. I know Joe has an open door policy. He's always available to speak to you if you know there are any questions that are posed that you may or may not have the answers to, or you just need clarification with. So before I review the format that we hold during these meetings, is there anyone in attendance tonight from our budget representatives that were not here on our first meeting, March 1st? If so, I just would like to, I'd like you to be recognized. So if we have anyone here that was not here last Monday.
I think we have,
Yes, my name is Jason Quinn. I am representing Southgate. I was not here last Monday.
Well, welcome, Jason.
Thank
And
you.
we're, again, very sorry for all that Southgate is enduring at this time. And thank you for being here tonight.
Sure.
So the format for this evening.
Wait, I'm Troy Sorio. I wasn't here last time. That's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, Troy. Now
I'm
you're
the-
at Shaker High School.
Yeah, I'm the freshman member of Student Board of Finance.
Okay,
So
well,
it's nice to be with you all tonight. Thank you for
really,
having me.
we're very happy to have you here. We're very happy. And as Mrs. Harrison will tell you, at any point in time, if you have homework to do, it has to take that has to be your number one priority.
Yes, homework is a very high priority.
So, is there anyone else? I didn't mean to cut you off. Okay, so the format is the presentations will occur, and after the presentation, I would say, because we have several presenters tonight, in addition to Mr. Core and Mr. Hoot. So I imagine after each presentation, we'll have an opportunity to ask questions. First, the Board of Education will ask if they have any questions. Then it will be our budget representatives from the schools. And then anyone that has a question can email their questions in to communications@ncolony.org. And there will be a slide that will come up at the beginning of this meeting, and you can jot it down at that point in time. So feel free to submit questions, and if we get them to them tonight, if you think of them after the meeting, feel free to send them in and we'll address them at the start of our next meeting. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Mr. Core.
thank you, Mrs. Nardillo. Appreciate your thoughts and Mrs. Harrison's thoughts with regard to Coach Maraja, and thank you very much. Jane, if we could pull up the slides for tonight, that would be great. Thank you very much. You know, as Mrs. Nardillo said, for our audience on the live stream, if you have questions or you have a comment to share, you can email communications@ncolony.org. And so let's go to the first slide here. So we always start every budget meeting with the lens, the focus through which we form a budget. And that lens, of course, is our mission statement, which focuses on two important components: meeting the needs of all students to provide them the opportunity and support to engage in relevant, challenging work, which contributes to not only their academic growth, but their social growth and development as well. So we look at a comprehensive education that addresses all facets of child development. And we look at, you know, operating under the notion that we will work and strive to meet the needs of all students. The second part of that mission statement is predicated on the fact that the individuals who work in our district, our staff, our teachers, our administrators, we all work together as a larger learning community. And that focus is on providing improving our collective capacity to provide a high quality, relevant, equitable education for all. And so when we look at all staff, we do mean all staff. And I think this evening's presentation focuses on an extremely important part of our district, and that has to do with our district operations. And so if we could go to the next slide, and we'll be addressing this more. We have our major pillars of academic excellence, equity, and social emotional health. All are major drivers to our budget. And so, you know, when we look at these three pillars, we are looking at, you know, again, identifying and addressing the continuity of learning. Equity is a driver. And we are looking to how do we continue to promote excellence and how do we close opportunity gaps so that we realize and actualize the all means all portion of our budget. And social emotional health is vital, especially during these times of the pandemic. Ensuring student safety and well-being is critical to that. So that brings us to the next slide, which is tonight's agenda. And when we look at tonight's work, we look at the important aspects of district operations. So we will have an overview of the departments for transportation, maintenance, custodial equipment, and maintenance projects. We will have the supervisors of those departments speak about their departments and speak about their budgetary needs. Now, when we look at these four functions, these four district functions, they are integral to the mission statement. They are integral to every component that we have, not only in our mission statement, but amongst the four pillars as well. Maintaining schools that are safe, that are pleasant for students to attend, that in the time of COVID are clean and sanitary and have a good ventilation and airflow. All of those are integral functions. Transporting our students safely in buses that are well maintained is an enormous task and a vital task for our district. So we will have these department heads present their budgets. For transportation, you will be hearing from Denise Town, who is our district director of transportation. Our maintenance, our building and grounds, our facilities department is directed by Brian Kraft. And you will also have our custodial department, which is directed by Mr. Mark Wiegert, and all will present background and needs for their respective departments. Mr. Kraft will come back on and talk about identified maintenance projects for this upcoming budgetary year. And then Mr. Hoot will be here to address a very important topic of debt service and interfund transfers. So without any hesitation, let's move to our first department presentation, which will be the transportation department. And Ms. Denise Town, our supervisor, will be presenting here.
Hi, everyone. Good evening, and thank you so much for letting me come and present tonight. This is my second budget presentation to the district, and wow, what a difference 1 year has made. But over that year, I've realized how really grateful I am to be working in such a great school district in North Colony, and just seeing that outpouring in love to the Southgate community today, like, reinforces that a lot. So I'll take my 2 seconds and just say thanks for having me. We can go to the next slide. So we do a side-by-side comparison here of our stats, basically. So where we are right now in 2020 versus where we were at this time last year. And you can see all the way down the slide that the numbers, for the most part, are significantly lower this year than they were last year. However, I find our projected miles for this year to be a little bit surprising. So we've transported roughly 3,000 students, fewer students this year than we did last year, and we cut routes by 6 full routes from last year to this year, but we're only 20,000 miles fewer than we were in the 18-19 school year. So I think, you know, that must be due, in fact, to, you know, the extra trip that we're making to and from the junior high every year or every day, and essentially having 4 tiers of runs instead of the 3 that we've had in years past. And these projected miles are without any field trips or athletic events. So I think if we had those factored in, we would have significantly higher mileage for this year. So as I touched on, our overall student transportation numbers are lower for public school students, for special needs students that we're transporting that are in person for non-public. We've lost a lot of drivers and bus aides. A bunch of them were retirees that we didn't replace. And you'll also see that the structure in our office has changed a little bit. We now have 2 assistant directors and
That's Denise.
sorry, we have 2 assistant directors now, reorganizing the office a little bit so that we could just, I guess, in a sense, maximize our output. Next slide. So one of the things that hasn't changed, I'm very proud of our maintenance team that we have at the bus garage. Stan Brackett does a great job with our fleet. Like Joe had said in his opening statements, putting kids on safe buses is, one of the key factors of what we do. So we are at our 7th year of having 100% DOT rating, and that's certainly something to be proud of, and it takes a lot of hard work, and we have really great guys. And as trying times have been, they've all stepped up, and everybody has a smile on their face, well, under their mask. So they all chip in, and everybody's willing to help out. Next
Denise,
slide.
I think before we go on to that, I'd just like to brag on your behalf and on behalf of the transportation department a bit. The 100% DOT passing rate is no easy task. DOT comes in 3 times a year. One of our board members who was connected to the New York State Department of Transportation in his previous life did a look at this, and usually, passing the inspections and the passing rates are compared in terms of, fairly large entities, transportation entities, and we are, in that larger group. In 1 year where that was examined, there were only 3 other entities who had 100% DOT passing rate. So to look at this 7-year consecutive run of such is truly remarkable. And we're very grateful to our transportation staff and our mechanics for maintaining that phenomenal rate.
Thank you. Okay, so part of the maintenance program is to replace buses once they get to be a certain age. So we keep our buses right around the 11-year mark. We replace between 6 and 8 buses per year. So for the coming school year, I propose that we purchase 7 buses. The associated cost is almost $850,000. Next slide. And these are the buses that we propose replacing. We use our buses, we use them a lot. Our spare buses are driven daily. They're maintained at the same level as all of our other buses. So, we're not necessarily replacing any of them because they're in bad shape or they're not running anymore. It's just they've lived their life with us. Maintenance on them just becomes more costly than it is beneficial to us. So, and you can see, for the most part, our buses have, over 100,000 miles. So we definitely get our money's worth out of them. I believe that's my last slide. Oh, it's not. I'm sorry. We also have equipment maintenance software that we put into our budget. One of the pieces of equipment that we use every day is our Zonar system. So Zonar tracks the GPS and it tracks the speed of the buses. It tells us if the door is opening and closing, and not just that, but we can also see the path that the bus goes at any point in time throughout the day. So if we wonder whether or not a bus went to a stop, whether or not the bus was on time at the stop, if they opened their doors and students got on. This is something that when we were doing tracing, we would take a look at that a lot to see whether or not we thought a student had gotten on the bus. So our Zonar system, majority of our units right now are the V3 generation, and they're doing a mandatory upgrade to their V4 units come next February. So if we don't include the Zonar and we don't upgrade our GPS units, then our GPS won't be functioning after February 2022. We are also asking for some new two-way bus radios. What we do now when we get rid of a bus, when we take a bus off the road and we sell it, we take the old radio out of it. So we've been recycling radios for a long time. But just like cell phones, you know, sometimes a newer radio is going to work better. It's going to have less problems. There's less wear and tear. So we're also asking to replace 8 bus radios. You know, when the mechanics work on the buses, they need pressure washers sometimes. You know, it helps cleaning the undercarriage of the bus. It helps cleaning the floor in the maintenance side of the garage to just keep things clean. Our pressure washers are old. They don't generate heat anymore. So we unfortunately do most of it with cold pressurized water. Another piece of keeping our buses up and running is to make sure our fuel tanks are cleaned and the inside of the fuel tank is cleaned and it doesn't have any mold or residue sitting in it. So every 10 years or so, it's good to clean out your fuel tanks. And then one other piece of it that we're asking for that we think could be very well received is Stop Finder. So Stop Finder is another piece of software that's in the TransFinder suite of software that we have. And it's a student tracking system. So what it does when parents have access to an app on their phone, think of it similar to Uber, and they can put in parameters for notifications. So they want to be notified when the bus is 10 minutes away from the stop, when the bus is 5 minutes away from the stop, or when the bus arrives at the stop. And on the flip side, they can see when the bus arrives to school. We can send out notifications to parents if a bus is running late for any reason. Like this morning, there was that rollover on Route 9 that had buses running late all over the place. We would be able to send out a notification for that. If there's a spare bus, you know, parents get used to looking for a specific bus number, not necessarily the route number on the side, or if there's a substitute driver. So it would be a great addition to our customer service. The only thing with this is it's $10,000 annually. So there's an implementation fee as well as a monthly fee, all told totaling about $10,000 a year.
Okay, thank you, Denise. I think that is your last slide, right? Yes. So with that, does the board, anyone on the board have any questions for Denise?
I don't have any questions. I just want to say Denise has done a phenomenal job. I mean, this has been a tough year, and I know it took a lot of creative thinking. I can't even imagine what it might have been like those first days in September when all of this was all these new routes were being implemented, and but you and your department have done an absolutely outstanding job. And I just think it's important you know that. We feel that way. Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, you did a great job.
I've got one quick question.
Oh, go ahead, Matt.
Oh, Mary, if you have one, go ahead.
No, I was actually thinking Sandy had a question also, but go ahead.
Ladies first, Sam. Go ahead, Sandy.
I just have a quick question about that Stop Finder software. Sounds like a good idea, but I want to just get an assurance that it's secure, that only authorized people like parents can access the route and the drop-offs and things like that. And
Yeah.
you remove people who aren't authorized for it anymore, for the safety of the children.
Yeah, so they would have to register, and each user would have to be approved through our office. And, so we would, verify that everyone who's applying is accurate. There's email verification that goes through with it. So yeah, that's, I think, part of why they've taken so long to develop, because they are, making sure all of those safeguards are in place.
So let's say a relative says, they're getting dropped off at my house. Would the parents have to authorize that relative to be able to see the route?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, just safety's sake, to make sure
Yep.
that nobody who shouldn't know where and when kids are getting off the bus can see that. Okay, thank you. That was it.
Thank you, Sandy. Go ahead, Matt.
So Denise, a quick question, and I apologize if I missed it. I know there is a local law at the county level where they're going to be putting out, I believe it's cameras on stop arms. Pretty great initiative on their end. If I understand it correctly, I don't believe there's a cost to the district, but I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing anything on that. And that's a big if that local law goes through.
So the stop arm legislation originally went through, I want to say maybe 2018. And so the only way that there's no cost to the district for installing the camera system is if you go through a third party. So there are lots of third parties out there that are willing to put cameras on buses, and then they take over the responsibility of viewing the video for infractions. And then that piece of it, the citation piece of it, is sent to the local police agency that they can then, because they have video evidence, issue citations. Because the third party is doing it, quote unquote, for free, they then expect to receive the profits from the citations that once they're paid. In order to set it up, you have to have an agreement with your local police agency. So for us, we would want to weigh out whether we want to do Town of Colony or Albany County. You would want to go with the agency that's going to give you the greatest area. So if we only had an agreement with Town of Colony, and say our bus was at LaSalle and Troy, and there was a car that passed the bus at LaSalle and Troy, if we don't also have an agreement with either Troy PD or Rensselaer County Police Department, then we don't have any recourse. It's just another car passing a bus. So the way that they wrote the laws, it's pretty cumbersome to make all the pieces fit together.
All right, great, thanks.
So Jennifer Schultz with Loudonville Elementary. I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Jen.
A couple. So my first question is in the slides, you discuss selling buses, but I don't see any estimates on the proceeds that you might receive from selling the buses that might be able to offset some of these costs.
So we just auctioned off 5 buses. The auction closed February 25th, and we still have 2 of the units that need to be picked up. We find that we get more when we auction them, but we're getting $7,000 for the used bus versus $1,000 on trade-in. So although we
Right.
do get some money back, it's not a significant amount of money.
And so I just, it's, without it being reflected, it's kind of hard to tell. Because when I'm looking at your slide where you talk about your ups and downs from 2021 versus 2019 to 2020, I'm trying to butt them up next to each other and kind of see what's increasing and what's decreasing. I mean, y'all are doing a phenomenal job. Let me say that. I'm just trying to understand from the budget perspective of the amount of increase that you're looking for from last year to this current year budget, and looking at those line items that are actually accounting for the increases. And it's hard to butt them up next to each other. Do you know what I mean? If you have one director, I'm having to look at each, I almost think of like an Excel file where they're right up next to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And when something's new, it doesn't have anything to the right of it, if you will, if that makes sense. But it's hard to kind of see that. I can tell by you organizing but anyways, it just kind of is hard to tell without them being next to each other.
Okay. So as far as the office reorganization, by changing around some titles, we were actually, and not, so one of our office staff members was leaving, and we saw the opportunity to restructure the office. So by changing titles and doing that, we were actually able to save quite a bit of money as far as salary goes. So there's no actual increase in office staff salary from this year to the previous year. So that's as far as that goes. Like we've looked over the years, we've done different things. We've traded buses in, we've sold them at auction, we've sold them on various different auction sites. And the one that we're using right now, Gov Deals, seems to be, the best one there. It's nationwide. Two people, the two sales that we had that picked up last week, one group flew in from California to drive the bus back, and the other group flew in from Colorado to drive the two buses that they had purchased back. So, there's not a lot to be made to offset the sale, to offset the purchase of buses. We had requested 8 buses last year at around $980,000. So $850,000 this year, is a full-size bus less. So, we are mindful. We kept buses longer this past year than we had previously, and that was strictly we didn't know how this year was going to look. We didn't know if we were going to have to add a number of routes to accommodate the reduced seating on buses. We erred on the side of caution, keeping 8 buses longer than we would have.
Thank you, Denise. Do we have any other questions?
Mary?
Yes, Scott.
Mary, I could just add a little bit of context to the bus sales.
Certainly.
In terms of dollars. In 2019, we received in revenue about $39,000 in bus sales, and 2020 about $33,000. Just to bring a little context to what it looks like, and year in and year out, it's in that neighborhood.
Thank you.
Mary, I had a couple of questions too, if we're
certainly
still on transportation.
Yes, we are. Go right
Okay.
ahead.
So one thing that kind of jumped out at me here, our projected miles for this year are very similar to our projected for our actual miles from 2 years ago, pre-COVID, but we're transporting considerably fewer students. Obviously, that's because we're putting fewer students on the buses. Do we just anticipate whenever it is that we come back to a more normal footing again after COVID, do we anticipate the projected miles still being about the same because we'll just be able to fit more students back onto the buses? So I guess where I'm going with this is, are these projections going to be useful for looking at the coming budget year?
So I think, no, I think once we get back to a more normal schedule, then our mileage will be, historically, it's always been upper 800, lower 900,000. This 850 is my projection through the end of June. And that goes from last year, the elementary students 4, 5, and 6 weren't housed at the junior high. So by nature, we have that addition.
Okay.
Last year, we had 10 middays. This year we have 30, so that's due to the increase. Last year, we essentially had 3 bell times. This year, we essentially have 4,
Right.
So all those extra trips to accommodate the fewer students riding on the bus are all factors into our having very similar mileage to what we had last year, however, transporting far fewer students.
Right. Okay. Another question is, given that we tend to keep buses for 10 or 11 years, and I don't expect you to have an answer for this tonight, certainly. But given that we're looking, whatever we buy this year, we anticipate having a decade from now. At what point, and I don't know if the state ed or the state has discussed this at all, but at some point, are we looking at having to purchase buses that use an alternative fuel instead of just standard diesel? And are we worried that our existing fleet, because I think we replace our buses a little bit less than many other districts because our transportation department maintenance people are so good. Are we going to get enough of a heads up on that kind of thing, or are we going to be stuck holding on to buses that might not have the same use to us at some point?
So I can answer that as well. So we've, districts for years on years, there's always the next best thing as far as fuel. So a bunch of years ago, 10-ish years ago, it was propane, and then it was compressed natural gas, and then now it's gas-powered full-size buses, and there's electric vehicles. So I've done a ton of research on electric vehicles, and the price point of the electric vehicle, which is around $400,000 per vehicle, it's 4 times more expensive than the bus we have now. I understand that there's grants and other things that are out there that can offset the purchase of that vehicle, but the grant is only for maybe $100,000. So you're still $200,000 plus on bus to bus comparison. Some of the other issues with the electric buses is that currently in New York State, there's no dealer for any electric buses. There's in White Plains, New York, they have 5 electric buses. They have a contractor that does the service for the district, and that contractor bought 5 buses. They were great when they started. However, now, because there's no dealer in New York State, anytime anything on that bus goes down, the dealer is in Canada. So you have the border shut down. It takes months for international shipping. The buses also don't have, the battery isn't as sustainable in the cold weather. And, we despite the fact it's going to be 50 degrees this week, we have very cold temperatures. So when you plug in that vehicle and you charge it, you don't have a 120-mile range in weather like this. You maybe have like an 80-mile range. So you have to be very careful on what buses you put it in, or what routes you put it on. It certainly can never be a field trip bus. And there's the push is to have those buses in areas that are called environmental justice areas. So, think like the Port of Albany or something like that. So that's another piece of it, that we would lose out on part of the grant because we're not necessarily an environmental justice area. There's no grant or additional funding to put in the infrastructure to support something like that. So it takes a lot of power off the grid to charge those 12 batteries that are on the bus. So yes, at some point when the buses are not really running, you could potentially use the stored power in the batteries to charge your facility, but it's very minimal. So again, it doesn't offset the initial price point of the bus. And then there's the life of the batteries. So the life of the batteries, so there's 12 of them on a full-size electric school bus, and they have a lifespan of between 5 and 6 years. So after 5 to 6 years, you have to replace those batteries. Those batteries are $5,000 each, and you have 12 of them. So after 5 years, you have to put in another $60,000 to keep that green bus running.
But I guess where I was going with my question is not that we should be looking at it this year, because nobody else is either. And as you just pointed out, like, it's just not affordable yet. But presumably at some point it will be. And we're sort of on pace to take, 10, 11 years to switch over whenever that happens to be, whether it's electric buses or natural gas or whatever it happens to be. Is that something we keep an eye on year to year? And at what point do we start having to make that decision to pay a little bit more this year, knowing that we're going to have to, whatever we buy, we're stuck with, not stuck with, but like we kind of commit to that strategy.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something that we keep an eye on. We weigh out every purchase every year. Like it seems like it's been the only topic of conversation in the bus garage with Stan, our fleet maintenance supervisor. Like, what way do we go? What is going to be the best for us? Not just today, but also long term. So yeah, we absolutely weigh it out and do our research and figure out how to be as responsible with taxpayer money as we can be.
Okay. And then my last question was about the Zonar systems. You mentioned that was in response to a mandatory upgrade.
Yeah.
How often do they do a mandatory upgrade?
So this is the first one that we're facing, and we've had, I want to say Zonar on the bus somewhere in the 5-year range. So not. Okay.
So it's not something that like every 2 years they say, hey, you've got to buy this new thing, or it doesn't work anymore. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question about the Stop Finder app. I know a lot of high school students, especially and middle school students, especially, it'd be very helpful for them to use it. So my question was whether it's just for the parents. Like, I know obviously elementary school kids are probably not going to want some random bus app on their phone because most of the time their parents still walk them to the bus stop. But for most high school students and middle school students, especially myself included, my mom is out of the house before I go to the bus, or she's working from home now. Before I go to the bus, and she may not necessarily check her phone. So would high school students and middle school students potentially be able to use the Zonar or the Stop Finder system on their phone, or would that just be exclusively for parents?
I think we would definitely allow students to track their own bus and be accountable in that way. I think so.
Troy, you're not looking to sleep in a little later, are you?
No, it's just, I know sometimes, well, I guess maybe some people, but
not you.
sometimes I'll just be waiting for the bus and it's like, it's out in the middle of December and it's like freezing out. And I'm like, okay, am I going to wait in the house a few more minutes, or am I going to miss the bus? It's like kind of a waiting game. And that would really help a lot of students out, like, especially people I've been talking to.
Mm-hmm. Good question. Thank you.
This is Mary Albert. I had one additional question on the Stop Finder. I was just wondering, I know this year, particularly with COVID, I know our family experienced, different bus shifts, due to different things. And I'm just wondering on the stop finder, is that like an automatic notice? So like if when the schedule shifts, right now we have to go into parent portal. And I know a couple of times you don't always get those notices. So is this like an automatic notice then, not just when there's like a traffic accident, but is it also like when the schedule shifts, will it notify the parents as well?
So I don't know that it has that capability to send you a notification that your bus stop time has changed, but I do know that it draws the information live from our routing software every day. So if we make a change in our system, it will reflect in the stop finder system, but I don't know that it's necessarily a notification set up that way.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, Denise, thank you for this presentation.
You're welcome.
Obviously, we appreciate that you are on top of everything, and we thank you for that. So, okay. Joe, would you like to introduce?
Right. So I would like to introduce now Mr. Brian Kraft. Brian is head of our maintenance department, and he will talk with great pride about their work and what they have proposed this year for the 21-22 budget.
Thank you, Joe. First of all, very nice job, Denise. That's a tough act to follow, so thank you. This is just a overview of our staffing to give an idea of what we kind of set up. We have a director of facilities, that's me, an assistant director of facilities, which is Alan Levitas. We have Sarah working in the office, which keeps us all working properly. We have 17 total maintenance workers fixing everything in the district. Of those, 3 of the 17 are full-time grounds workers, and then 2 additional are hired for summer grounds work. I put that there because in my long-range plans, having more full-time grounds workers, that would be a goal, but obviously not this year. So,
Brian, do you want to? I think I think we need to speak a little bit too about the the quality and the the qualifications of our maintenance workers. We have a staff who maintains but also builds and supports. So if you just want to talk about some of the individuals who are working there and their qualifications to do very, very advanced work for us in the district.
yeah, I mean, we have, I knew it coming in. As I spend more time here, I become more impressed with it. You have Joe Crispo down at Grounds, who has grounds knowledge that is just incredible. When you talk to people from Saratoga Sod and other places, they ask him questions. They've dealt with him for years. He really knows what he's doing. We have electricians, Rick Doty and Sam. Rick was brand union jobs, similar to what we're doing over at the middle school right now. And Sam is a younger employee who is just very talented with a lot of experience and knowledge. Together they do things and fix things and save the district money that is incredible with lighting upgrades and repairs and knowledge. We have HVAC plumbing crew right now that is outstanding. We have 4 to 5 different employees involved in that who just fix a number of things and fix them. And all these groups will fix something in a day that would take, I've experienced taking months to do at East Greenbush, because you have to hire a contractor and it's expensive. And, carpentry, we got skilled carpenters. We build rooms from start to finish. So it's quite incredible. So
Thank you. Someone put you in the background, please. That would be.
If
Mr. Court,
you speak
maybe Mrs. Dawson could mute Mr. Chamberlain.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Brian. Were you finished? Or
Yeah, I think I said enough on that. They're very talented. It's
Yeah.
incredible. And there's few districts, definitely in the capital district, that have these level of employees. It's a true benefit. So next slide, I guess.
Thank you. And we have seen their good work throughout the district.
Yes, thank you. This is just an overview of some of, the size of the district. It's something to remember that, we are one of the larger districts that we're trying to maintain. We have 13 different buildings, over 1 million square feet. From a heating standpoint, you have 30 boilers to maintain, over 75 large commercial heating and air conditioning units, which is something that's changed over the years. Some of the guys who are a long time here talk about walking up on a roof and not seeing one unit. And now you walk up there, you see multiple units on a roof. So as as we grow and the requirements for air conditioning and heating in different areas, that grows. District-wide, we have over 3,000 doors, lock sets, associate hardware, 4,000 plumbing fixtures, 15,000 light bulbs, which custodial helps with all that too. Over 30,000 electrical fixtures and components. And my new one is air filters. And we change air filters 3 times a year, and every time it's 1,300 filters. So it's quite a task just changing the air filters.
You've been installing the MERV 13s as well.
Yes. Yep, they're all in. The MERV 13s all did come in. They're all in the schools. The next order is placed, and we have a storage place to put them so we can have them ahead of time, hopefully, and not wait. And then for grounds, we have 284 acres of property, 8 playgrounds, 20 parking lots, 21 practice fields and playing fields, which after this project, we have an amazing facility for athletics. We really do. And then over 5 miles of fencing to maintain as well. So next slide, please. This is just an overview of our equipment. It kind of leads into the next one for the equipment request. So we have 20 vehicles, service trucks, vans, dump trucks, and pickup trucks, 12 plows, 7 commercial mowers for grounds, 6 equipment trailers to get everything around to the different schools, 3 field tractors, 2 backhoes, which are very nice to have. And then over 25 specialized pieces of equipment and attachments, field graders, painting machines, deep tine aerator, not on there, but we bought last year was a line painter for the parking lots, which hopefully we'll get some. We did some for COVID between the high school and middle school this year, and hopefully we'll be painting the parking lots ourselves a little bit, keeping them up. So. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is a request for vehicles. And we pretty much request 2 every year. We had 1 last year. 2 seems like a decent number. The reason for the previous slide is to show we don't want to end up asking for everything at once. We want to try to, filter them in as they get older and not let them get too old to spend too much money on it, but also you don't have the fleet just become all old at once as well. So this year's request is 166,000 total. It was 135,000 last year. And it was 165,000 in 2019-20. And I believe the difference is some equipment on the end. So we have a Ford Ranger, which is about 55,000. It replaces truck 71. It's in the shop probably monthly now, getting something fixed. So it would be nice to get that one fixed up. Then an F-350 with a plow with a utility body. They're about 70,000, and that replaces truck 64, which is a 2004 F-350, and definitely ready to be placed. As I mentioned last year, we do not put the mileage up because it's embarrassing, but it's actually positive because we don't drive a lot of miles. The 2004 it doesn't have the amount of miles you would think on it, but it's just because we're in the district and we drive to school and we stop there and get some work done. So, and then the request on the bottom here is $25,000 for HVAC rooftop equipment, which was a request that we had last year as well. We replaced 3 units in the district, 2 at the high school, and then 1 over at the middle school in the library. I'm going to do the same thing again. Probably should change that from rooftop to just HVAC equipment, but we'll work on that next year. So that's a big help to us to things that our guys can do on their own without a big project, $5,000-$6,000 units, get them done in and out, and instead of fixing stuff, get new units in. Next slide, please. And these are 2 new pieces of equipment we're looking for, not full, but there's a continual fight with the lease on campus, Southgate, Loudonville, especially. Our current leaf vacuum just cannot handle it. I was warned about it, and we went and used it, and we burned up the motor last year. So we would like, if possible, to get a real commercial leaf vacuum so we can clean up the schools a little better. And the guys are really interested in making that happen at a different level. And then a mower deck for the Ventrac, and that allows that piece of equipment to be used for mowing, as well as some of the other field maintenance tasks that we use it for, instead of buying a whole new machine. So we're asking for a piece of equipment, but hopefully saving a little there as well. Next slide, please. And this is just an overview of our replacement plan for our vehicles. It shows the 21, 22 to request. And then it shows for next year, the 2 that we will be requesting next year, and kind of staged out as we go. And then each year when we look at that, it's staged, like I said, it's 2 a year right now. If it gets to the point where we need to slow up a little bit and it's 1 a year, we'll adjust that as we get out to that 5th year. But that is kind of the plan as we go through it. And we review that every year. Next slide, please. And this is our equipment, pretty much our grounds equipment type stuff. Really not requesting anything new, just not requesting replacements this year. Our equipment's really in pretty good shape. And I think next year we'll be looking probably to try to replace the Steiner unit. That is just an older unit, and the attachments are a little bit difficult, don't work with some of the other equipment we have. And it would be nicer to get that done. But for this year, we're good to go on that stuff. The guys take care of it, and everything's working good. So we'll talk about that next year. Next slide, please. Okay, this is a little slide just talking about some of the good things that have occurred in the district over the past 3 years. This is really security initiatives that started before I came, done through transfer projects, through the capital project, and some internal work as well. But in the last 3 years, intruder locks installed in all the classrooms and offices, so they can be quickly secured from inside the room. We don't have anyone having to go out inside in the hallway to lock a door if it was a lockdown. In high priority areas, front entrances, side entrances, security window film has been placed on the schools to prevent entry from someone we don't want to come in. And then at the end of this summer, all schools will have secure vestibules, which was a goal. And there's a very nice feature to have. I think the schools that currently have them in are really enjoying them. So, and then after this year, we have upgraded security camera systems at the middle school and high school as well. And I believe the one I left off was fire alarm systems, which after this summer, all the schools will have upgraded fire alarm systems to current code. And with this project, we really lucked in on that because the code changed, the technology changed, and we got it at the beginning. Lots of times you get a system put in near the end of a code change and you're stuck with something outdated for a while, but we really got a nice fire alarm system for the whole district. So happy with that. Next slide, please. We have kind of ventured into some NYSERDA energy type programs. There's a benchmarking program that Scott and Mark started before I arrived and got involved with. They review our bills and they compare our buildings against other commercial buildings that are supposed to be similar to ours. And they provide us year-to-year feedback on our energy performance. I'm very happy this year. We actually used 13% less energy in our buildings, which was surprising because we all expected with the increased run times and the increased outside air amounts from COVID that we would be using more energy this year, and we didn't. So we're kind of proud of that. Again, the type of employees we have working in the district, maintaining them, are really staying on top of them, making that happen. And I think you can see a direct result of our investment in our HVAC control systems for the project, because really the phase 2 schools that went through a year of getting all the kinks worked out, they had the strongest results and were a big part of that 13%. So that's a nice benefit. Next slide, please. So in the phase 4 schools, Train did the HVAC upgrades, control systems, and we were able to partner with them. They worked with Scott, and we discussed the options. And through NYSERDA, the way they do it is there's $77,000 per year to provide preventive maintenance for the system, analytics, and system checks, which is really, really nice. So the preventive maintenance is nice, and it's being paid for by NYSERDA. It's not out of pocket to us at all. It actually provides some of the best training I think that you can get, because a tech comes on site, he talks to your employees about what's going on in the building, he shows them how to correct it. It's not, you're not sitting in a classroom. And just a little note is basically if a control system isn't properly maintained, you lose the benefits of the investment in a new control system within 3 years. Basically, little things get out of whack, and that multiplies into larger things. And as it shifts, you're not sure it's happening. So this is a very nice program. Next slide, please. Okay, so our National Grid Incentive Programs. These are primarily through the project. So through the capital project and the last transfer project, we have applied for and received $90,000 in energy efficiency incentives due to the control upgrades at Shaker Middle School and the phase 2 schools. And we still have about $25,000 that we've currently applied for LED lighting upgrade projects performed by district staff. We just did, this past year, we did the parking lot lights at Shaker High School. We got to finish up Loudonville and Latham Ridge, but by our staff doing the work themselves and applying it for the incentive, that paid for itself. Basically no cost to the district. And then you'll get the energy savings. And we have another application in, which I'd love to tell you how much it is for, but it's an approval stage and they're still working through the final things on that for the interior lighting upgrades for the projects. And I really think that's going to be something we'll come back to you with, because lighting upgrades are very beneficial to the districts. And I think it's going to be a sizable number. So next slide, please. Okay, these are two things that we want to talk to about in case we had money left to include some extra stuff into the capital project. Security cameras at the elementary schools. That would provide all schools in the district with an upgraded security camera system, which we currently have at the middle school and we're having at the high school. And that would be a total of $550,000 if we were able to, the savings were there on the project to slide in. And I think, at the middle school already, we've seen some benefits from having cameras at work and you can view and share properly. And then at the high school, if we were able to include the HVAC control system upgrades there, it's our largest building and will allow us to further impact our energy savings initiatives. That would give us all districts buildings with an upgraded control system. And we are waiting pricing on that. It's not a small price, but it would be a very beneficial item. So next slide, but I think that's all for me.
Good for you. Well, thank you, Brian. So we'll open it up to the Board of Education with any questions. I know there's a lot of information here.
I have a quick question, if I may.
Yes, you certainly may, co-chair.
Yeah, you're doing a great job, by the way, I have to admit. You're way more eloquent than I would ever be. The security cameras, I believe there's still some smart school money, the smart school bond money left, unless we're using that all for the technology upgrades for this past year. Would the security cameras be able to be funded through that?
So what talking to ITs a little bit, what we had talked about is possibly using some of that in the phase 2 for the wiring portion of it. Phase 4 already has the data wiring included. We got that into the project, so it's just the actual cameras. That seemed about the portion. Definitely it's something that could be used. Probably would be a quicker mechanism to go through the project, but we can discuss that, how it all lays out. So,
And I would say, Ron, the biggest problem with the smart schools is the application process.
Yeah.
Versus being included in the bond means that we can get it done as part of the project versus the application process, which can be delayed for months.
All right, that makes sense. Thank you.
Any other Board of Education questions? Okay, we'll open it up to our parent representatives. Okay, Brian, well, thank you again for all your good work, not only in your presentation tonight, but the tremendous work that you do for the school district. We appreciate it.
You've been a great resource for the capital project work.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, excellent. So thank you, Brian. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, Joe, would you like to introduce Mark?
Yes, so I would like to introduce Mr. Mark Wiegert. Mark is our supervisor of custodial services, and he will talk about his department and present its main budgetary needs for the year.
Thank you very much, Mr. Corr.
Hi, Mark.
Hi, how are you? I just wanted to start off with just talking about the custodial department a little bit. We have one director of custodial services, which is me. We have a secretary to the director and for the custodial department, which is Miss Pam Tabacco. We have one custodial supervisor, Mr. Craig Jewett at Shaker High School. We have 26 custodial workers throughout the district. We have 7 day lead custodians, 2 night lead custodians, 2 custodians that just have the custodial title, which work for our district. We have 1 cleaner, 1 motor vehicle operator, and 16 part-time cleaners, plus we have substitute cleaners as well. The custodial department plays a significant role in the district. We provide safe, clean, healthy environment to all the staff, students, and faculty. We not only do we do that, we perform setups for the district. We do grounds work. We take care of snow removal. We do basically all the moves for all the classrooms in the district when we need to. We also transport items throughout the district, deliver packages, mail service throughout the district, and we play a significant role in keeping this district functioning. I'm very proud of our custodial team. We have a fantastic team right now of lead staff that help out any way they can. We have set in place a strict disinfecting program with our foggers and our electrostatic sprayers to keep all our classrooms safe. They've done a great job so far. So it's been a very a different year with the COVID. coming into play, and things have been a lot different with us, but we've definitely took on this challenge and trying to keep everything open as much as we possibly can.
Mark, I'd just like to also add to what you said about your department. The challenges this year have been substantial. And so if you go look back into our reopening plan, part of our reopening plan called for 2 shifts, a morning shift and an afternoon shift over at Shaker High School. In the morning, our 7th and 8th grade students came in the afternoon. One cohort would be either our north or our south cohort, followed by the other cohort the following day. So our custodians in between the cohorts had to go in and sanitize each and every room, and then maintain do the normal work that they do during the day, and then come back around after the last cohort leaves and do the same level of sanitation as well. And so that's extremely important work, and that was work that was done in each and every school. At the beginning of the year, we had to move furniture. We had to relocate that furniture to achieve the required social distancing in each of the rooms. So it was a demanding year for custodial services, and I want to thank you and your department for the excellent work that you've done.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, the staff do a great job, and we have the help of all the departments in the whole school district. So maintenance, transportation, they've all been very helpful as well. Next slide, please. Brian kind of touched base on the facilities. We have 12 buildings that we maintain, not including Maplewood School. This year, halfway through the year, the custodial department had a hard time in hiring new staff and substitutes. We ended up having to drop Maplewood School as part of our cleaning schedule, and they provide their own cleaning service now. So we have 12 buildings that we maintain. We have 8 school buildings and 4 other buildings, such as transportation department, the maintenance facility, the Maplewood Annex, which is the custodial department office, and we also have Goodrich facility. The square footage is up there over 1 million square foot. Our benchmarking for our custodians in the district and our cleaners is about 32,000 square foot per custodian for a 8-hour FTE. On average, a normal cleaner, I would say like a national average, we kind of use a benchmarking of 28,000 to 31,000 square foot for a normal 8-hour FTE. We're a little higher than average, but we still do a great job. We still get it done. I'm very proud of our staff for doing that. Next screen, please. The equipment request for the custodial department this year is a commercial dryer for Shaker High School. Last year, we took this out of our budget. We had requested this last year, but to save the district money, we took it out and we postponed it till this year. They're in need of a dryer. Wet dry vacuum. We use these a lot during the summer for when we strip floors. Very important role in when we do our very detailed cleaning in the classrooms. We're looking for one of those for Shaker Middle School. Floor scrubbers. We're looking to replace the two floor scrubbers, one at Forts Ferry, one at Latham Ridge. They both are pretty old right now, and they've seen better days, and it is time for their replacement. Commercial lawnmower at central office location, the Goodrich office, and that's about $2,500 for a good commercial lawnmower. A tractor at Shaker Middle School. We're looking to add an additional one with the square footage there, the outside areas for snow removal purposes mainly. The tractor we're looking for is like a shaft-driven tractor. We're looking for a higher-end tractor to be able to handle the snow and do it efficiently and more effectively in that location. And that would be a snow thrower attachment and a mowing deck attachment for that tractor as well. So total, we're looking at for equipment replacement and new equipment, we're looking at about $48,600. Next slide, please. Here's our custodial department equipment replacement plan. As you see, we did postpone the purchase of the dryer from last year. We added it into this year. And we do utilize the dryer for, we do our own laundering here at Shaker High School, and we do uniforms, we do mops, we do rags and stuff for cleaning. We launder all that ourselves, and that kind of saves us a lot of money. So you can see in the 21-22 exactly what I just stated in the previous slide, what we were looking to purchase. And if we look at 22-23, we're looking to purchase another tractor and a few more floor scrubbing machines, which are essential to our schools and keeping the floors clean throughout the district. Next slide, please. I think we're done.
Mr. Kraft will be talking about these. So I think, Mark, if there are questions. Mrs. Nardolillo, I think Mr. Wiegert is done with his portion of the presentation.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does the board have any questions for Mr. Wiegert? No, but we do thank you for keeping our schools safe for our students and our staff and everyone that's employed there. So thank you for that. How about the parent representatives? Do we have any questions for our custodial department? Okay, thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Nice to see you. And Brian, would you like to tell us about the maintenance projects?
Yes. Yep. So these are kind of they're maintenance projects. Things we got to do to upkeep everything. Playground surfaces, which we've really made a huge attempt the year before I came here and since of trying to get the playgrounds to a different level. And this has been requested every year I've been here. It's $20,000, which is primarily just for the wood chips, playground mulch. So we have money to add. I think this year currently, I just looked at the PO. I believe we spent about $12,000. Still got to get into the spring and go through. And it's really coming along and starting to work. We found an existing piece of equipment that goes through and cultivates the chips, the existing chips, and takes care of some of the weeds and flusses it up and cuts down on how many you have to buy. So, we got Justin and Liam as a team working on that out of grounds. So I think that's going to come along well. The parking lot striping I mentioned a little bit earlier. We're estimating $6,000. That's really just paint and maybe some off our work, but the painters already do that a little bit. So just because you got to be able to, if we're going to do lots, we got to do it when they're not there. People aren't there. Excuse me. But that should be a good benefit. We already own the machine now. We bought a very high quality machine, and it's very expensive to hire contractors to do that. So if we're able to spruce it up along the way, it's nice. The window blind replacement, again, this is the third year that we're requesting this. This is something developed along with Scott and Mark. As we noticed that the window blinds district-wide, really, there was a lot of requests and a need to start a program. Really, the implementation of this is me and Mark discuss kind of where we're going to head, the money's right, and Mark does all the heavy lifting. So I get to talk about it, but he does quite a bit. He gets the quotes, the POs, and then deals with the contractors as they come in. So far, we completed Shaker Middle School because there were sections that were not getting renovated in the project. So that whole school is done now. Blue Creek is going to be done. We just had to add a couple more, but that should be done now this year. And then 2 wings of Shaker High School. I complete as well. So this year we're planning Belt Hills and then 2 more sections of the high school as well. They're kind of bigger sections at the high school this year. And that was kind of the plan, is we'll do an elementary school and do part of the high school instead of just getting stuck in the high school and getting nowhere else in the district. So we'll get more accomplished, or at least affect more people, hopefully. And then small abatement projects, I carry usually 25,000 a year, just in case we have a classroom that has an issue, with tiles popping or something with the popcorn wall surface, and we have to do an abatement before a larger project comes along. And then the other requirements is for the building condition survey was moved to this year. And that is approximately 75,000, which should be in the budget to cover that if it's necessary. That's really all I have, I think, unless there's questions on those items.
Mr. Brian, I'd just like to add a couple of things. So maintenance projects are not aidable by the state of New York. And so the state would have a definition of what is an aidable project and what that would constitute a capital project that most likely would be done through bond work or the like. So the items identified here are items that need to be done, but they would not be defined as aidable by the state. Mr. Kraft also mentioned the BCS, the Building Conditions Survey. This is something that is normally done every 5 years. And so we were on a 2010, 2015, 2020. We were supposed to have it last year, but it's been pushed off a year or two, I believe, for us to have this. And this is a survey where an architecture engineering firm comes in. They look at the major systems in each of our buildings. They do an evaluation. They do a rating based on state guidelines and state rubric there. And really what it becomes is a blueprint and a plan for the work that needs to be done, the updating, the repair, or primarily the replacement of systems related to heating, electric, and the major systems that we have in our buildings throughout the district. But it really kind of gives you some guidance here and over what to attack over the next 5 years.
So do we have any questions regarding these projects?
I have one, Mary.
Yes, Sam.
That building condition survey, that's required by the state. So even though it's done by a third party, right, that's a state requirement?
Yes.
And you said it gets pushed, or it was pushed now a year or two. Do we get to defer that or carry that all the way forward? So now instead of being, in 10, 15, 20, and 25, are we looking to, we'll do one this year or next year and then have it be in 26 and 27?
I don't know the answer to that, Sam.
Okay, I'm just curious. At that cost, if we can push it out a couple.
I mean, I would think so, but I can't say for sure.
Sure. Okay. Just
So if I may, I know the answer to that.
Good.
It will be every 5. It still will be every 5 years. It will be staggered now. So basically, the state listened to everybody. It's a very nice idea. Everybody in the state was doing them on the 20 and 25 and 30, 35. So they staggered them out. So the architects have time to spend on each survey. And then also as the projects come out, instead of every architect having a project in every school district, they can kind of plan them and stagger them along as they can too. That's the concept. It's much better for everybody. And even though we got pushed a year, we didn't get pushed out all 5 years. So we still get to do it in a timely manner compared to when we need it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any further questions?
Mary, I have a quick one. Brian, I see we have the playground surfaces listed. Believe it or not, I'd say the most popular question that I get from fellow parents is regarding the playgrounds, especially in the summer, weeding and maintenance, things like that. Are you confident that with these wood chips and building that back up, that'll control that a little bit more?
Yes, I definitely do. And I think the piece of equipment we have is it's called a power rake. And it just really cultivates that down, rips it up, And the problem with the wood chips is that they're not cultivated enough, not moved around enough. Seeds get dropped into the wood chips, and it becomes a surface where stuff can grow. So we got to keep working on that, of not allowing them to take root, and then adding more as necessary. It is a constant battle to keep enough surface on the playgrounds, but
Listen, I know from my backyard how fun summer can be, so I know what you're dealing with.
Is that it, Matt?
I'm good, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Any other questions? How about from our parent representatives?
I have a question. So
Yes.
since you're talking about how this is a constant uphill battle and we're constantly having to pour more money into the wood chips, would the district ever consider, or do you personally think it'd be better to replace the entire playground surface? I know many like playgrounds in cities have, I'm not exactly sure of the material name, but it's like a black, it's kind of like tarmac, but it's like more rubbery. Would the district ever consider that, and would it be cheaper to do that rather than to continue to have this constant battle with wood chips?
it's basically a rubber chip, recycled tires. It's very costly. So every time I've looked at it, the cost is amazingly high, and the wood chips work out much better, and that's pretty much preferred method of handling it at schools.
Okay, thank you.
Good?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions? Well, thank you again, Brian.
Yeah.
And Mr. Core, do you want to introduce Scott again?
Right, and so, this is an important topic, and we are going to take a look at our debt service, and Mr. Hoot will be there to talk about, the current state of affairs and, discuss, our plan for going forward and some of the considerations and options that we may be looking at. So Scott Hoot, Scott's our Assistant Superintendent for Business.
Thanks, Mr. Core. Let's start by just taking a high-level look at what the current bond issues look like, and then we can take a little bit deeper dive into the debt associated with the capital project. So we have two bond issues currently outstanding. They are coming to the end of their amortization schedules. So we currently have just shy of $5 million due on those two bond issues, and they will both be paid off by the time we get through the 22-23 school year. The debt payments associated with the current $106 million authorized project, we started incurring debt on that project in 2019-20, and that was in the form of bond anticipation notes. Bond anticipation notes are taken out for cash flow purposes, and the principal and interest does incur on that, and they are annual borrowings. They are 1-year temporary borrowings to get through to the end or near the end of a capital project. So those bands were then renewed at a higher value to meet cash flow the next year, this current year, 2021. And then when we move to 21-22 and beyond, we will now be looking to move into the permanent financing phase, where we take the project to the bond market, and then we'll create amortization schedules over 20 years and 15 years, respectively, depending on the pieces of the project we're talking about. 20 years for new construction and 15 years for renovations. Next slide, please. So this is a schedule to outline what I just talked about in greater detail. And the first column, the 2021 column, you can see the two current bond issues, a rather small one that will have a little better than $151,000 due next year, And then the larger, much larger of the two at a little better than $2.3 million. So those together about 2.5 million. And then we will have a payment on a ban, an $80 million ban, which is $2.665 million. So that was the current, in the current year, almost $5.2 million of debt service. Now we move into 21-22, and the two outstanding bond issues, their payment is almost the same, a little better than 2.5 million. Then we move into payments due on the bond anticipation note that's currently outstanding, and that's about 2.8 million. And the next items, anything labeled bond, and in this case, about $74 million of bond. These are projected dollar values associated with taking about 75% or a little bit less of the project to the bond market for permanent financing. That small amount will only represent an interest payment in this 21-22 fiscal year before the total principal and interest payments will kick in the following year. So in 21-22, it's just about $1 million greater in overall debt service from about 5.1 to 6.1 million. So now we take a look at the next 2 years out as we move to full permanent financing on the current capital project. So in the two outstanding bond issues, 2.4 million will be due. And again, that will then be the last payment due on those bond issues. We will still have a smaller ban issue out for one more year. That's projected to be about $851,000. We will have the full bond payment on the $74 million bond, just about 5 million. And then the second bond issue of about 25 million will have, again, a small payment in that year, interest only. So here we are with we get to a year where we got a pretty substantial jump from 6.1 to about 8.5 million. Then once that upper portion of the bond payments drop off, then we get some relief when we move into the 23-24 school year, and that drops down to 7.2 or about 1.3 million. Now, looking at those numbers might give you some concern with the substantial increase from 6.1 to 8.5 million, but the building aid will start to be realized on the project, and it will start to be realized pretty substantially next year in 21-22, and then again another jump in 22-23. We also have a debt service reserve of about $1.2 million, which we would project to use in the 22-23 year to help offset that pretty substantial jump in debt service. So we've been layering in to the general fund budget what the cost of the project will be, and trying to minimize the annual impact or increase to the budget. And I think we've got a couple of things playing in our favor. One, the building aid ratios on this project have improved since the project was originally approved by the voters. A major portion of the project will be aided at about 80%. Initially, when the project was conceived, it was about 67%. So that's it's a very substantial increase. And that relates to the portion of the project that qualifies for the incentive aid associated with the Maplewood annexation. The other portion of the project, the lesser portion of the project, will still be aided at a fairly high ratio at 61% versus what was anticipated to be about 51 when the project was first conceived. So we've got about 10 plus points jump in our building aid ratios, which will have dramatic impacts on our building aid, which is applied against our debt service, which then lowers our net local share and net impact on the general fund budget. Another thing we have working in our favor is the project is trending under budget. Mr. Kraft did talk about some initiatives that we will be exploring for inclusion in the project before we get to its end sometime probably later this fall, early winter. But even with considering those projects, we're still trending under budget, which means we won't need to borrow the full authorization, therefore lowering our debt service expense.
I think we have in-fund transfers.
We do. We can go to the next slide, please. So Mr. Kraft did mention that some transfer work, as it's known, where budgets are developed typically in the $1 to $3 million range to do some small capital work, and that money is budgeted in the general fund. We have not budgeted anything this year, nor is it projected for next year, and we didn't the year prior also, because we're in the midst of the $106 million capital project. So we've been able to take care of a lot of our capital needs through the big project, as opposed to smaller projects, which had been the norm leading up to the large project. The second bullet relates to the school lunch fund. And some of you may remember that last year we budgeted $50,000 for what was termed at the time negative balances in the fund, because the regulations require the general fund to fund negative balances in the school lunch fund. During the course of COVID, starting last March, credit goes to Lisa Ostrowski, the manager of the school lunch fund, and her staff for doing a great job and making great efforts throughout this period of time to provide quality meal service, which has been a tremendous challenge, and a lot of credit goes to them. So what I'm about to say is not at all a reflection on their efforts in terms of the economic performance of the school lunch fund, because they've done the absolute best they could possibly do during this period of time. Having said that, in the last school year ending 2020, the school lunch fund experienced about a $450,000 deficit, operating deficit. In this 2021 year end, we're projecting an operating deficit of about $200,000. So at some point in time, the fund balance gets exhausted, which it will, and therefore, it will become the general fund's obligation to keep the program whole, if you will. So that's why at this point in time, we're projecting an increase from $50,000 this year to $250,000 in next year's budget to keep the fund whole operationally as we move through this difficult time and hopefully return to more normal cafeteria operations, and they will be self-sustaining as they have been in prior years. The third bullet is called Transfer to Special Aid Fund, and it relates solely to summer school special education costs. Those are shared by the state and the school districts in an 80%, 20% ratio. The district general fund picking up 20% of that cost. And that has remained fairly constant over the years, and we're projecting that 20% share will be about $225,000 for this upcoming summer.
Okay. Does anyone on the board have questions for Mr. Hoot?
I have a quick question, and I apologize if I missed it. What's causing the aid ratio to be higher on the bonds?
We could probably do a whole session on all the various factors in the 26 pages of the aid formulas. But it's just a factor of those income and property value figures that go into pretty much all of the aid formulas. So taking all those factors into account, it was a little bit of a surprise. It jumped quite as much as it did, but in this case, we'll take the good news when we can get it, and that's a substantial bump in the overall aid formulas.
That is great news. I was just surprised by it. Thank you.
Any others?
No, Mary, I have a question.
Absolutely, Sandy. Go right ahead.
Scott, you might have said this too, so I apologize if I missed it, but what are interest rates looking like for us for the bonds? Are they better than what had been forecasted, or are we about where we had been forecasting them to be?
That's an excellent question. I'm glad you asked it. They're currently forecasted better than we had expected. And there's another good news piece there. And I'm trying not to get too far into the weeds here in terms of building aid, but the state formula for building aid uses a presumed amortization rate and amortization schedule. So let's presume, for sake of argument, that the state will pay us aid at an interest rate of 2.5% on an assumed amortization. So if we go to market and we're able to bond at 2%, we're gonna make that half point better on this overall net cost formula. So right now I'm only using that as an example because have been working closely with fiscal advisors as we get closer to going to the bond market, especially in these times, and having them pay close attention to the market conditions. And in my most recent conversation, I asked them that question: how are we trending? Will we do better than the assumed amortization? And the answer was yes, we should, for a couple of reasons. One, market conditions. Two, this is a substantial bond issue, and the market likes those. Three, we have a high quality bond rating, so we're attractive to the market. So long-winded answer to yes, we're trending better on all counts.
What is the neighborhood of the rate we're looking at right now? Is it under 2 by any chance?
They did say under 2, that we could be high 1s for this upcoming bond issue.
Good. That's good news. Thank
Yes.
you.
Anyone else on the board?
Yeah, I had one question, and I I think you answered this for me last year, Scott. I remember asking the question, but the payments that we make on the bands. So I'm looking at 2.6 million for the 2021 year, and then 2.8 million for the 21-22 year. Are those just interest, or is that accruing to principal as well?
Those are principal. There's principal and interest.
Okay, so they're both lumped in together there, as opposed to that 740,000 for the bond, which would be
just interest.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the market, the regulations do require principal pay downs on the short-term borrowings. And then those principal payments come off of our total. So if we go to the market with $105 million and we've already made principal payments on the band of $3 million, we're only going to borrow $102 million
okay.
in the bond market.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Now open it up to our budget representatives. Okay. Well, I thank you. I think we should put up the next slide so we have the,
Yes, Mrs. Nardolo, and I just want to check with Julia from Communications. Do we have any questions or comments emailed to us?
No, Mr. Quard, no emails.
Okay, thank you. And I've just been informed that we had 19 viewers on the live stream tonight. So this is our schedule going forward, Mrs. Nardolillo and Mr. Vondell. Next week, we will be looking at instructional technology equipment. And as you referenced, Ron, the Smart Schools Bond Act, we'll have a reference on that. On the 24th of March, that was listed as an optional date. We are now going to have a meeting date, and we're going to be taking a look at staffing implications for new programs and initiatives and anticipated building enrollment. And on the 29th of March also, because that is a night that we want to spend time on, we will have a repetition of that. So on April 12th, that will be the time where the board will come together. We will have a review of the budget to date at that time. Our tax cap will be updated. The property tax report card will be presented per requirement of the state. And we will go through the different voting schedules for the budget. And then on the 21st of April, the board will adopt the proposed budget at the monthly meeting. May 5th, we have a public forum on a budget and a meet the candidates night. And then on the 18th of May, that is a Tuesday, we have the annual election and budget vote.
okay, thank you very much. And there is our email address. If is anyone watching, if there's anyone watching that has questions, feel free to submit them. To our budget representatives, feel free to share this information with anyone who may have questions. And I'll turn it back to you, Mrs. Harrison.
Thank you, Mrs. Nardolillo. Yes, we want to thank our community budget representatives. And we'd like to thank Troy for being here with us tonight. As I said last time, it's really important to us for us to have a high school representative here. And Troy's a freshman, so he has 3 more years of budget meetings to look forward to. So and good times are ahead, Troy. All right, I'll take a motion to leave budget and adjourn. Mr. Johnson, I'll take a second. Mrs. Pangburn, all board members in favor. Thank you very much. And again, thank you for being with us tonight.
Have a good night.
All right.
Yeah,
Good night, everyone.